At any one time down in Ecuador, we had on our payroll or in an intimate working relationship with our station one vice president, a president of the Chamber of Deputies, a president of the Senate, a vice president of the Senate, a number of senators, a number of deputies, the Secretary General of the Democratic Socialist Party. We even created a party down there which we called the Popular Revolutionary Liberal Party, which would appeal to a lot of different people. We had extensive propaganda operations during this period also. The outstanding liberal columnist of the country, Gustavo Salgado, who wrote for El Comercio, which was one of the principal dailies, under pen names, working for us, writing up our material and publishing it as if it were his own. We would publish small notices which would be practically hysterical outcries against the growth of communism in Ecuador or a specific issue such as the visit of diplomats from some communist country. Our participation consisted in creating the conditions of fear and at times hysteria with regard to the growth of the left-wing political organizations in Ecuador, such as the communist organizations, and the fear with regard to the influence of the Cuban Revolution. Our themes were the threat of these developments to traditional Ecuadorian values. And when I speak of Ecuador, I am speaking of most of the rest of Latin America too. The family, religion, and tradition, essentially.
When you were in Argentina, you had developed a relationship with the producer of the Argentine newsreel. And could you mention how that worked?
Well, what we did in that instance was take stories, news stories regarding world events, Russian activities or U.S. activities regarding Cuba, and Cuban activities in Latin America, and we would twist the story so that it would have a context, perhaps, or sometimes an explicit statement of information which was really not true, but which supported the position that we had. This was the way the news was presented. We worked in a commentary that presented the slant that we wanted.
The use of forged documents and false documents is another area in which the CIA can bring about a very timely effect. In Ecuador, for example, we at one point wanted to expose the preparations for guerrilla activity of a particular organization, and while one of its leaders was in Cuba on a trip, we wrote up what would appear to be, the way we wrote it, his report to the Cubans. We put this report in a toothpaste tube. This was planted in his luggage when he returned on this trip and discovered by our people in the Treasury Ministry, and he was immediately thrown into jail, and when the report was finally published in the newspapers, it caused a sensation all across the country. We were able to force the Ecuadorian government to break relations with Cuba, and at the same time we were able to promote repression of left-wing political organizations, eventually establishing a military junta which took over in July of 1963.
When I was in Argentina, the most interesting thing we had to do regarding Castro was to drum up support on the part of the Argentine government for the Venezuelan charge that Castro was supplying guerrillas in Venezuela with arms. The arm cache was found in November 1963. I had served, before going down to Argentina, as a Venezuelan desk officer. And I was surprised that one of the things that was developed as proof was a series of statements by some man who had been captured back at the time when I was desk officer. And somehow these arms were supposed to be delivered 2 years later, supposed to be tied in with an urban guerrilla plot that he confessed to. Well, in the first place, everybody who becomes a prisoner of the security police in Latin America usually confesses, and knowing what our directives were and what we had to do to try to convince the Argentines of this, I have some suspicion about the reality of this arms cache as a Cuban operation. I think it might well have been planted by us.